Okay, wait. So you're telling me nobody remembers those Berkeley fishing naked man commercials from like 2006?
I would think I'd remember something that distinctive.
I distinctly remember being like, I don't know, a little kid and then seeing those commercials with a bunch of naked men while watching like Saturday morning fishing shows with my dad. No one remembers this. It was for Berkeley Gulp.
Just you.
Okay. Well,
I have no clue what you're talking about. I remember you talking about this back at the hotel like a while back.
yeah. Okay, this is awkward.
I mean, you could talk about it again if you want. So the lawn jockey thing.
Oh yeah, this is an interesting thing that I found, and okay, maybe it was just one of those things where the person just wouldn't no answer would satisfy them, but it is kind of an interesting dilemma, the lawn jockey problem, or I guess this is just kind of a general problem with problematic artifacts. So, inspired by a social media post about a Jocko-style lawn jockey, which if you don't know what those are, you could probably just Google images Jocko lawn jockey. The poster of this, thing stated they had to explain to multiple guests that this lawn jockey was left at their house by a previous owner, and they were very adamant that they did not want it, and they were wondering what to do with it. They noted that it was too heavy to move. Now, the post was old and the comments on it were locked, so I couldn't say anything. But if it were me, I would simply have repainted it. It gets rid of the blackface, and I'd hate to destroy a valuable antique. But the poster, and this was further explained in the post, was very set on getting rid of it and would likely object anyway. But I thought that would be the best course of action. It's not racist anymore, and it's sellable. And it made me think of this. The kind of person that would continue to call you a racist is probably the kind of person to whom you will never be able to prove you are not a racist. Like, if they're not okay with you, like, painting over it, like, no, it must be destroyed somehow, you're probably never going to be able to convince them you're not. Because think about this. The blackface is gone, but now some people will claim that the mere ownership of a lawn jockey is an example of racism. Or your fondness of equestrian imagery is an example of deep-rooted white supremacy. Or even, ironically, while altering it to be socially acceptable, you're somehow hiding the horrific past of white people and refusing to take it head on and are therefore a racist. I could even see some Twitteroids claiming that because you didn't smash it to bits and punch the seller immediately upon seeing it, that you're somehow complicit in white supremacy. People will say ridiculous things. Yeah.
Well, and I was just going to say, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Because no matter what you do, somebody's going to say it's wrong.
Yeah.
You can't win with that. You absolutely cannot.
So, it's just one of those things where some people, nothing you do will ever be right. And most normal people probably wouldn't have an issue with painting over it, especially since it seems like the easiest thing to do. And I think this is just a general problem regarding the preservation, display, alteration, or disposal of historical artifacts that are considered problematic in the modern era. Yeah, you're right, it is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you get rid of it and cover it up, well, now you're hiding the horrific past. But if you continue to keep it, you're obviously a racist, homophobic, whatever,
Yeah, it's like that chart I saw about movies. It's like, so if you think of the truth table, you have 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. That covers all 4 cases, right? If you just have 0 and 1 in 2 places where you could put them.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first column we have 0, 0. Let's say it's a movie with just white people. That's 0, 0. Oh, that's racist because there's no black people. Okay, fine. Let's do a cop. Let's say it's a cop movie, right? Let's do 0, 1, right? The next number in binary. So that's white cops and black other characters, right? Black criminals, let's say, in this movie. Oh, that's racist because, white cop, black criminal. Okay, let's do 1-0. Let's do black cops and then white criminals. Well, that's racist too. And let's do 1-1.
Well, because now the black cops are a bunch of Uncle Toms and race traders.
Yeah, and then let's do 1-1. That's black cops and black criminals. It's like, oh, it's just black people killing each other. Yeah, so it's like, so we've covered all 4 cases here. We've covered 0-0, 0-1, 1-0, and 1-1. We can extend this. We can just add another digit, and go up to the 8 if we want to include another race. 16 to include another. Yeah, we could do that. And there will be an argument every single time that you can make that it's racist. So there we go. We have just used logic tables to show that's correct. You can come up with racism you can say that anything is racist, basically,
In fact,
if you wanted to.
You could relate this even to social media in the modern era. Like, say you make a post that is homophobic but don't realize it. Someone points it out, you apologize, alter the post maybe, but now we have the same problem. If you alter it or delete it, you're a homophobic coward.
There it is.
But if you leave it up, you're a homophobic piece of shit. If you apologize, some people will claim that no apology will ever undo the damage you cause. So,
Yeah,
it's exactly.
there's always a problem. Whether you go 0 or 1, there's always a problem.
Yep. So that's just some sort of social phenomenon I figured out. I call it the lawn jockey problem. It's entirely possible that somebody else has come up with anything I come up with. It's entirely possible somebody
There's
else
just another name,
has
maybe.
already come up with it. But how do you search this stuff up?
We
exactly?
don't. We use ChatGPT.
I guess
We
maybe.
use ChatGPT and they will tell us. So let's
You
do
can't
this.
use ChatGPT because it's racist.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. We can't use it because it's racist. I forgot about that.
I also just completely made that up.
Can't
out of
ask
nowhere.
ChatGPT if it's racist either because it's racist. So
You
it'll
say you made it up, but it's actually a thing.
Well, someone said it, I'm sure. So.
Oh, okay. So what we'll do is we'll do lawn jockey effect. I don't know. What I would do is actually copy that whole thing, but that's not happening. So we'll do what is the phenomenon called where if you destroy historical art, it's going to take me a while to do this historical artifact, like a Confederate statue, for example, it is racist for denying the past, but if you keep it, then it's racist for memorializing it.
I'd say memorializing it or,
Okay, so what is the phenomenon called where if you destroy a So yeah, anyway, the phenomenon you're referring to is described as a what? No, that's not.
Did you just break ChatGPT?
No, it just gave a lame answer. The phenomenon you're referring to is often described as a dilemma or controversy surrounding historical artifacts.
It
Such
gave
a non-answer.
It gave a non-answer.
Such a non-answer.
well, maybe we can coin it the lawn jockey problem.
Okay, I'm gonna ask it again. Okay, but is there a nicer name for it? Let's see.
Is there a name for a phenomenon like this?
Yeah.
Maybe coined by an academic?
I like the title it came up with, ironically. It's an artifact dilemma, remember or remove.
I think the lawn jockey problem rolls off the tongue
I
better.
like the lawn jockey problem too. I think we can give it a name then. If ChatGPT doesn't know, then we'll come up with that. Lawn jockey problem.
Yeah, so that's, side rant.
Good for you. That's original then.
Yeah. Okay. But so the big thing I have written down that I know we were discussing in the car, the universal frustrations of being a teenager. Okay. Let me tell you, I actually thought of these when I was like 15, 16, 17. And I'm like, okay, is it just me being a teenager here? Like, I'm going to disagree with these in another 10 years. But now I actually just wrote this, remembering all that, a few weeks back. So, and I still agree with it. So I guess, it must be somewhat valid. Let's see, what do I have that? Number 1, you're an adult when it's convenient for us, and you're a child when it's convenient for us.
Ah, yes.
Yep. Let's see, you must act beyond your age, but we can't trust you to do basic thing. You're both mature and extremely immature at the same time.
Oh yeah, even my mom has this problem. She's in her 50s. She has this problem with her mom. like her mom's like, I'll always, I always see kids as kids. And like, you're crazy.
Let's see. When it comes to proving responsibility, the mountain grows at twice the rate you climb. So like, if you want to prove that you're responsible enough to do something, it's okay, do this. Nope, not good enough. Maybe if you do it every day for 6 months. You did? Nope, still not convinced.
It's a moving goalpost.
Do this, not good enough. Do this as well. Oh, still not good enough.
The CEO of Pepsi, when she became CEO, you can look this up by the way. I think her mom was like, "That's cool, go get the milk," and then like, as she wouldn't even entertain the conversation until her daughter got the milk. So she got the milk, then came back, and then said she was CEO of Pepsi, and the mom's like, "Cool, now pour me the milk." You know what I mean? It's like.
Well, I think it's like you want to prove you're responsible enough to do something, but then they make you jump through hoops to like prove your responsibility.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's kind of an extension of this too. I wrote a side note that months or even years of trustworthiness and responsibility can be completely undone by even the most minor infraction.
Or perceived infraction.
Yep. I think a lot of teenagers have done that. Like, you have a job, get all A's, made honor roll 4 semesters in a row, president of the achievement club, what are ya? Do 6 hours volunteer work a week. Oh, look at you, you're so responsible. But then one day, you miss curfew by 10 minutes. Oh, well, you're a failure, a slacker, a loser. Don't even ask if you can go to your friend's house this weekend. We raised you to be better than this.
Yeah,
How could you?
So I was, I didn't get enough time with my therapist, so I ended up having to ask ChatGPT about this one.
That's a quote.
So I asked it, like, so why do parents behave this way? Like, why is it that, like, for example, like, if you get sick, it's somehow your fault? I don't know if y'all have ever had that experience.
I've never had that. Oh, well, I mean, I could imagine a parent saying, like, well, maybe if you didn't,
you should have stayed away from people. You should have washed your hands more. You should have worn a mask. You should have done this, that,
I've experienced this.
Yeah, okay, so you get it. It's like, well, okay, first off, I'm sick. I don't need this right now. Like, I would prefer, like, someone cared for me, or at the very least, not whatever this is.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to dote over me, but I really don't want you to get angry at me. Like,
because that's kind of not helping. But what was I getting at? Oh yeah, it's like, that's just, I don't know, like, I was asking ChatGPT, like, why do parents do this? And then it gave the non-answer of, it's like, well, parenting styles are different based on culture, but part of it, like, it gave some valid reasons. Like, some of it is like, well, the parent actually does care, but, like, this is their way of showing it. Which, it's messed up, but I actually understand the sentiment behind it. It's like, oh, right, so, like, they have trouble expressing their feelings, so they're angry at something, but they can't actually be angry at the source, so they direct that anger towards you. But they're angry because it's a weird dichotomy. It's like,
they care to a fault.
Yeah, it's very strange. Now, I don't operate like that. Instead, I choose to be crazy, and like, whenever you see, whenever I get angry, I never get angry at y'all. I get angry at like a random corporation or something.
Yep.
Like, I get angry at a random corporation, and like, because that's socially acceptable nowadays. Back then it was. Actually, I don't know if it's socially acceptable now. They bought off a lot of the lobbyists and media, so it's sometimes not socially acceptable. Like, this part might get censored, for example. But yeah, like, I get angry at a random corporation because that's usually where it should go. Like, by default, it's like one of those things, like, I don't know where to throw this away. I guess I'll put it in the landfill can, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if it's recyclable. I'll put it there. So I put the random hate towards the corporation because, they're probably overdue for some anyway. But, like, I think parents don't really know how to do that. So they direct the anger towards, like we've been talking about in the car, the oldest child.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Well, and I think all of this kind of comes down to, like, oh, wait, here's another one.
Oh, this one's typed.
Yep, this is typed. So I probably came up with it like 2 days later when it happened to be on the computer or something. Another thing, and I've definitely experienced, is even as an adult, to some people, you're always guilty of something. You can't walk down the sidewalk in your neighborhood without someone automatically thinking you're up to no good. You know, like you're walking somewhere and respond to a text, and suddenly it counts as loitering. Shop keeps coming out, all right, fellas, keep it moving. No loitering allowed, you know. Well, wait, I was just responding to a text, you know. Or you go into a store and they're watching you like a hawk, just waiting for you to slip something into your pocket. Or actually, we still experience this when we go to the park to like play wood chips or play basketball. Like just some friends and I. You and your friends go to the park to play basketball, and suddenly you notice that all of the parents are calling to their children like, oh, it's time to go. And within 2 minutes, everybody else has cleared out from the park. You know,
More park space for me.
I guess. Well, you know, it's like you said earlier when we pulled up to that place and then like the dad had the kids and he laughed as soon as we showed up. It's like, well, if they want to think of us as bad people for just existing, I guess that's on them. You know, they're only inconveniencing themselves.
I know, and we're not even black. You can censor that out. But like, come on.
Actually,
like,
that is one of the things. Like, imagine if I had a skateboard,
right? You
or
know,
what if I was black?
Or piercings,
You know?
right? Like
Oh.
actually, we look very innocent. I don't understand.
Well,
yeah, no.
we don't dress like we look very harmless. We look like the people who get bullied actually. So I don't understand that. Like I really don't understand that.
I was that person, but I wonder too, does this say something about like society as a whole nowadays? Like way back in the day, people were just more trusting, but now everybody's got their eye out. Like, you know, it's not even necessarily like it might be you, but it's also like anybody I don't know, any stranger, I have to assume the worst
I've
until I
actually
really know them.
heard that a lot of that started with the whole stranger danger thing in like the 90s,
Yep.
where that's when suddenly everybody became paranoid. And yeah, that's just what I've heard.
It's
You know,
gone too far, and I think you're seeing now that generation is all grown up and has, you know, kids of their own, and like in the case of like the park, for example, and they've gone too far with the stranger danger. Like anybody I don't know is automatically up to no good. Like notice nowadays you'll see you go into some place that's crowded, but there's all these tables, but everybody wants to sit by themselves, despite the fact that the tables could hold multiple people. Nobody wants to make conversation with anybody they don't know. Or like I was on a train just recently, same thing. Everybody wants to sit by themselves, despite it being like.
But if you
crowded.
were sitting by yourself, would you want some random person
Well,
to
let
come
me put
up
it this
and
way: it's a
sit down
societal
at their
thing,
open
though.
tables?
We've been conditioned like this, you know. Maybe it would have to be something that would start from the get-go. But it's like, and yeah, you could argue that, but then it's like, you know, people would be. I mean, some people would go as far as like, I'd rather take a different train and sit next to someone I don't know.
dude, I used to deal with the exact opposite problem back in like high school. Is like my friends would leave to go to band practice because they were in the band, and then they'd leave me by myself at the table for half the lunch, and then you'd get these people that think you were some bullied loner kid. They'd come to you like, oh, like, are you sitting by yourself? Oh, do you want to sit with us? I'm like, I have friends. You literally just saw me with them. Like, are you just trying to give me brownie points because you're afraid I'm going to shoot up the school and you don't want me to be, you don't want to be victims? Like, what's going on here? You know? Well, that's a life pro tip. Don't be nice to the loner kid. Don't be mean to the loner kid. Because when he shoots up the school, he'll target you. But don't be nice to the loner kid either. Because then, when he shoots up the school, he won't be able to stand the thought of his one friend seeing what he has become. And he'll shoot you. Honestly, it's best for your survival if the loner kid has neither a positive nor negative opinion of you. Because then, you know, your survival chance is the same as everyone else. So, life pro tip. You know. Anyway, but yeah, I used to have the opposite problem happen to me. You know? Well, you know what else too? Maybe it's a sub problem,
We'll
or
unpack that later, but yes.
or it compounds. the aforementioned problem is that everyone, especially authority figures, will always automatically believe the adult in the situation. Like
Not
again,
me.
as a teenager, an adult's word is gospel and yours is dirt. If some parent decides to tell the lifeguard that you're harassing their kids, even if it was actually the kids harassing you, well, guess who's getting kicked out of the pool? You
Oh.
think it's that family? Probably you.
Well, you. Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Well, that and I guess
Unless you have a protected characteristic.
oh,
well,
yeah,
Then it's their
that,
fault.
yeah.
but then like
You gotta get them lawyer
this,
vibes.
I think that's even an extension. Maybe this is something we could sort of go into a little bit, like parents where their kids can do no wrong. Oh no, my kids never do anything.
Yeah, the
wrong.
sun
Oh,
shines out of their butt.
You know, rose-colored glasses.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, here's also something. Speaking of that, like this characteristic, is this a boy problem more than an agender teenager problem? Because I notice oftentimes girls, and I remember as a teenager, girls would get treated very differently than boys, it seemed, even if they were of the same age group. I
So
guess
it's
as
different
long,
by who?
I guess as long as the girls weren't showing midriff or had piercings, otherwise, they're sluts.
Right, that's socially unacceptable
Oh, yeah.
by the Christian.
Oh, they're
dads.
going. Yep, you're gonna see them on the stripper pole in another 3 years. But
Because
like,
the horny Christian dads can't contain their feelings, and so it's the teenage girl's fault for dressing that way.
well, yeah, actually, that's even a side note. Is when it comes to like criticizing like the fashion industry for pushing that on teenagers, I don't think it's actually the fashion industry doing that because teenagers tend to copy adults in their fashions.
Yes.
Now, when I see a like 11-year-old girl dressing like that, and it's obvious, she can't wear adult clothing, that's like a, tween or what do they call it, juniors or something. That's when I criticize the fashion industry, like, okay, you specifically made that like slutty piece of clothing for that age group.
Yeah, it's like gross, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's designed.
And actually,
For that
I
age
once asked, like, why do girls have so many different sizes? It's because,
question.
teenage girls that are developed can fit into adult clothes, but then juniors, you don't have hips and you don't have boobs. That's like,
Oh, it's because of different
like
development.
9 to,
Because
like
the
13.
development age can differ. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was something I never realized, like, oh, wait a minute, that's why girls have multiple sizes, but boys, it's just
There's
boys, men.
and there's other
No.
things. There's other things going on there, but yeah.
Yeah.
Like there are some arguments to be made that the fashion industry is taking advantage of young girls by like
Oh,
preying
yeah,
on their
yeah.
insecurity. So that has some variance.
I
to
mean,
it.
like when I see a like 15, 16-year-old dressing like that, it's usually just because it's usually adult clothes aimed at adults, and the teenagers are just following
and they
it.
just want because
Like I said, when I see an 11-year-old dressed that way, that's like
that's the fashion industry.
yeah, that's the fashion industry.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean that's total side rant, but and here's also something just going back to the main point. Do you think that a certain amount of teen rebellion stems from the frustrations and, shall we say, gaslighting described previously?
Oh, 100%.
I definitely
100%.
want to say so.
Yeah, and it manifests itself in different ways, like the rebellion. It doesn't always. It's not always like, oh, the kid goes out, does something illegal, goes out drinking or stuff. It can be small stuff too,
Mhm.
and it can also be held in and then like expressed later in college, for example.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I was just saying, yeah, I recognize there are bad teenagers, but there are bad adults too. And I mean, sure, their brains aren't fully developed to get that, but I think we can still agree that teenagers sometimes are even held to higher standards than adults, and the version of the real world that they're told is highly exaggerated.
oh yeah.
I kind of noticed that, like, amongst teachers and even my own parents. And sorry, now I'm an adult, like, with my own car, my own place, my own real post-college job, and I'm like,
More money than all the teachers I've ever had.
yeah, and I'm just
funny.
like, wait a minute, this is nothing like the horror stories of the real world
Maybe
that
it's
I was
their
told.
world. Maybe it's their world. Imagine being a teacher, dude. That sucks. You're like underpaid, underappreciated, have to be around kids all the time. Yeah, that's hell for the teacher.
Yeah.
That's why they're telling the story. They're not lying. They're telling you their truth, which
Yeah.
sucks.
To what is saying, it depends on your individual situation. Like, really, I think a lot of it can boil down to how much money do you make or don't make.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
You have a lot of problems, a lot of them stemming. Like the doctor, it's like, you have a lot of problems. A lot of them is because you're poor. it's like, well, why do you have this problem? It's because you can't afford this. Why do you have that problem? It's going to cost $10,000 just to look at it, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The root cause of your problem is that you're poor.
Pretty much.
Oh, dude, I used to remember getting that with homework. Like, I remember being told in middle school that teachers won't accept assignments unless they're all entirely written in cursive in blue or black ink. Like,
Just
no,
sounds
when you
made
go to
up.
high school, okay, boys and girls, when you go to high school, teachers will not accept any assignments that are printed. You must use cursive, and if you don't, you'll get a 0. So you better learn cursive. Guess what? Went to high school, never once wrote anything in cursive.
Oh, and the high school to college jump is even funnier. It's like the people that are allowed to teach in college, they're such characters, man. Like, almost half of them are high. You have to be high, otherwise, like, how are you accepting that as your life? Like, you have a PhD, but you're making $30,000 a year. You must be high. Like, it is impossible to sleep at night knowing that you have gone through that much schooling but only make that much money. You have to be high.
Welcome to college, where your English teacher can barely speak English.
well,
This is true. They're all like Indian, Chinese. Like, if you go to engineering school.
And two things to go off of that. First of all, you get some of these like low-cost community colleges, and you have two kinds of professors. The ones that know where they're at, they're content, they know what they're getting paid, so they only work as hard as they have to, and they're real easygoing. Then you have the Harvard rejects that want to make everything, like, I refuse, like, I know, they know where they're at, but they in their mind, they're going to tell themselves they're somewhere better, and they are better, and they're paid more, and, they're like, they think they can climb the ladder or something.
Yep.
You have that going on. And then the other small tidbit I was going to say is to the thing about, you're going to have to write everything in cursive and whatnot. I remember in middle school, they said to us, they're like, you got to keep up your grades in middle school too, because, colleges, like, there's, a lot of competition, going into college, and, they're going to look at your grades from high school, but if there's, all that, they're going to start looking at your grades from middle school.
Holy fuck, I remember being
They
told.
tried to tell us that. And
I
I'm like,
remember them pushing college, like, when I was in 6th grade. They
Yep.
remember they kept telling us, like, go to college or you'll be poor. Like, I was they had an entire generation of kids convinced that we'd all be homeless unless that's an exaggeration, but if we didn't go to college, we'd all be like, I don't know,
Dead.
living in our cars,
Probably
homeless,
something like that. Unfortunately,
If we
that's
didn't
getting
go to
closer to
college.
reality, but that's a bit too real. Maybe some of it's wanderlust. Maybe some of them are, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's like they're trying to live vicariously through the kids. Like I said, most teachers, like, society doesn't like them. They don't appreciate them. They're underpaid, underappreciated. So maybe they're like, please don't end up like me. Please go to college, like, or like,
The
please.
teachers did go to college.
Yeah, they did. Like, please go to a good college, or please do something different than
Please
what I
don't
did.
go to SIU.
Please-
I beg of you.
Please just don't do what I did. Like, if we got some of that honesty going, I would actually respect them a lot more, because, like,
I've had that exact thing happen, actually. So former teachers of mine saying, do not become a teacher. Like, they have to keep doing what they're doing. There's no time to go back to school. But if ever don't become a teacher. They actually literally said that.
yeah, it's sad, ain't it? Like, that kind of profession should be more celebrated in the United States, but it's not.
I mean, there's a lot of words
Yeah.
celebrating it, but
Yeah, there's
Not
a lot of work, but no
necessarily.
actions, no money, no funding, no programs, no social support. Like, it's just like,
the most you can hope for is like a free, donut
Pizza,
at Dunkin' Donuts if you see you wearing
Yeah.
your teacher.
yeah, like that teacher appreciation week nonsense. It's not even like a free thing. It's like 10% off nonsense. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just, it's sad. And these are the kids. These are like the adults you leave your kids with for like 8 hours a day. You would think that, based on, I don't know, people pay a lot for childcare. Ironically, like working adults, they pay so much. They pay more in childcare than I pay in rent. They pay like $2,500 a month. I'm like, if you're paying that much for childcare, it can be argued that their job is a liability.
It's also even worse where we have, as aforementioned, the parents that see their kid can do no wrong, meaning like, kids messing up or acting up in class, well, now it's somehow the teacher's fault,
Yeah.
To that point, real quick, I've had some teachers tell me that, like the ones that have been doing it a long time, years ago, it was more like the teacher calls the parent and says the kid did something bad. The parents were very understanding and would, reprimand the kid. Now it's what you said. Basically, well, how come? Well, why did you do? Now all the blame is put on the teacher for that. Well,
Yeah.
It's your fault. You're not teaching. You're not. Somehow, if the kid is doing anything wrong, they're not. The teacher's just being crazy. The teacher's doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Yep. Well, okay. It doesn't really relate to teaching. Well, yes, it does. More daycare. Although, because I'm talking about young children now.
Oh,
We're talking like under 8.
We're talking like,
Well,
yeah,
maybe that too,
below
but-
the age of 8. So, well, I'll just say, I guess maybe to partially close this up, here come all the parents fighting with us in the comments and trying to discredit us. Like, oh, you
We're
have
not
your
gonna
own
read them.
place? Just wait until you have to mow your own lawn. Then we'll talk.
As if we don't already do that.
Like all the parents that think that the little things they do are somehow an accomplishment. Also, I think I might have just said this earlier, but a big thing that gives validity to these statements is the fact that I still agree with them as an adult. Like, I came up with these when I was like 15, but since then, I've graduated high school, graduated college, have a full-time job, have a car, pay rent, pay utilities, whatever, and I still agree that teens are given an unfair deal. So I think that just offers more validity. And I raise my glass to the 95% of people out there thinking they'll remember this and never treat their own children this way, who will then proceed to treat their own children this way.
If you have enough money for those children, by the way, which most people, again, let's go back to it. Like, most people, like, their children, like, it's not good. Like, they're raising children poorly because they don't have money. Like, some of y'all, like, there needs to be a test. Like, you need to have at least $500K in the bank before you have kids.
I
Right?
disagree. I
Like,
mean,
that's my opinion, and I know you can disagree with that, but like, I'm just saying, like, it takes a lot to raise a kid. It takes a lot, and having financial difficulties on top of that, I can tell you personally, it's just too much. It's just not fair to put a kid through something like that. Like, kids need a stable environment to grow up in. And I'm not saying they should be coddled, but I'm saying they shouldn't have to deal with the utter nonsense that poor people have to go through. But then again, that's an America problem, not just a kid problem.
mhm. Well, anyway, what I was about to actually go on with, and this relates to teachers, I love how our segments can just segue, is, what I was just thinking, and this is almost a legal question I have, but it's like, imagine if you had to initially write these laws like in the 1800s. Are young children treated like livestock in the eyes of the law? That they are considered irrational and unpredictable?
Yeah, they can't sign their own contracts, basically, like livestock of the parents.
Consider this. There are states that limit the liability of damage caused by children that parents are responsible for. And I think it's because of that, okay, consider this. We can prove this. Children are irrational.
Mm-hmm.
How many of you listening to this wanted to be a dinosaur when you grew up?
I think that's just you, but yeah.
Well,
I get the sentiment. I understand the sentiment. It's like, how many of you wanted to be an astronaut, for example?
I don't think we need to prove that children are, irrational. Unpredictable. Young children are unpredictable, right? They
This is
don't
true.
always act under reason.
Same with adults. But
Well, yeah, but the reason I was thinking this was, imagine a hypothetical situation where like little Johnny bites little Timmy at a daycare.
yes. But
Obviously if we're talking ration, like okay, the teacher can't.
little Johnny
eat.
needs a beat down at home.
Yeah. Well, the teacher can't immediately respond to it. I would think it'd be reasonable for the teacher to take a few seconds to respond to it, you know. But the thing is, like, you know, when parents will come by and say, "Oh my God, we don't know why you did this. It was just so out of the blue. He's usually an angel at home," you know. But well, the thing is, they may not be lying.
Right, it might be true.
Yeah.
It might have just acted out of character and bit somebody.
I mean, think about it too. Children, you know, with their timers, like little Johnny, especially young children, thrive off routine. So you can get it where, like, little Johnny usually goes to daycare, like wakes up, eats breakfast, goes to daycare. But today, his mom decided to stop at the store before dropping him off at daycare. And about 3 hours in, he decided that's enough socialization for the day, time for a meltdown, you know?
Yeah.
So what's the alternative?
Well, that's
Treating little
exactly
Johnny
the
like
thing, though.
an adult
Well,
when he bites someone?
Here's the thing, though, and this is why I think I understand limiting the liabilities, because what are the parents and what is the daycare teacher supposed to do? Like, if little Johnny won't let go, can the teacher take off her shoe and start beating Johnny? No, you know, so it's kind of an interest, and I guarantee there have been court cases about this. I almost guarantee, or something similar.
Probably do, depending on the amount of money Johnny's parents' lawyers have. I mean,
Well-
Johnny's parents.
Well,
Like, you know, so argue psychiatric evaluation, stuff like that. Saying, like, oh, yeah, it's just like, you know, there's no jail time. It should
I mean,
just be like,
I don't think you're gonna send like a 6-year-old to jail.
I'd send a 6-year-old to jail. I mean, that's just me.
Well, this is what I mean. Like, I wonder if anybody's ever used that argument in court that little kids are like livestock. They're irrational
I
and
don't think they use the word
unpredictable,
livestock.
and they're like livestock.
Yeah.
They're irrational and unpredictable, and anything they do should be considered like the farmer or the parents aren't legally liable for.
Right, because they're just too unpredictable.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't, like, just restrict their freedom too much. Like, you can't just tie them up like livestock.
And that's exactly, too, the thing is, I think with the limiting liability, I think the law recognizes it. Like, what if you got, like, a teenager that's going through their fuck society phase, you know, they
I'm
decide
still
to
in it.
mouth off to their teacher, parents punish them, they mouth off to the teacher again, no matter what you do to punish them, they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Like, but the law doesn't allow you to, like, beat them with a shoe.
You can't
know?
beat them. The worst you can do is, like, truancy, you know,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So it's kind of, there's even a legal limit, like there's a certain point where your hands are tied legally in that sense. So I think it's interesting, the law recognizes that there are limits to the law. And I was just kind of thinking about this the other day, you know?
well, that, and it's like, how much of a hard ass is the judge going to be? I think it all sort of, it can come down to that. And I think it also can come down to, like, in more minor stuff, like, oh, they bit someone, but there was no, like, major...
There's no damage. Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, society just needs to collectively understand that it's
just
a
a
natural
child,
thing
yeah.
that happens.
Yes.
It's a child.
You know,
It'll happen.
A young child is irrational and unpredictable.
Yeah.
Exactly that, yeah. Kind of interesting. I don't think those specific words have ever been used, and I'd be very curious to hear somebody that knows about, like, this sector of law, you know, what they think, or if they actually know any, like, cases, because you know for a fact this has gone to trial sometime in
It
the United
had to
States.
have been, or like
Like, there have been some case where, you know, yeah, little Johnny bit little Timmy at daycare, and now little Timmy's parents are suing little Johnny's parents for like $10,000, you know?
Well, and, like, this is actually a real life example of this I had heard of was at some point something vaguely to the effect of, you know, this kid that was like 8 years old woke up really early one day and the parents were still asleep. He grabs the car keys, finds them, you know, they think they have them hidden from him, like he's never grabbed them before, right? They have no reason to believe they need to hide him any better. But nevertheless, he grabs the car key, starts the car, and starts driving. And now the parents are charged with child endangerment. Nobody was actually injured or hurt, but they're still being charged with child endangerment. And it's like, well, wait a minute, how is that their fault?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you don't
Like,
expect an
that's
8-year-old to
ridiculous.
drive. Like that's
Yeah.
They need to hire a good lawyer, like, because that's
Yeah.
garbage.
Well, it's also like the thing, they took reasonable steps to ensure that, they took what, in my opinion, reasonable steps to ensure the child wouldn't start and drive the car, which I think already is really far-fetched,
Yeah,
but,
that's
you
already
know.
ridiculous.
It's like, who's gonna expect that to ever happen?
It's
rare.
also
Like,
child endangerment, but the child endangered themselves, which you could definitely argue that a child wouldn't be able to appreciate the danger of what they were doing, but I don't think the parents put them in that situation.
Yeah, let's
either.
think about the scope of responsibility that the parents have. Like, what are they supposed to do? Lock the kid up? Lock up their...
Hog time in the
up the
closet.
car keys.
Oh wait, the law says you can't do that.
Yeah.
So you know,
Well, and how many people just have like kitchen knives in a block on the counter?
yeah.
Yeah,
Like they're
what
not
is
like
the other
bolted
thing?
down
Yeah.
like at a store.
Like, what
you,
is the
you put
spirit?
them you put them on the counter. You know, like how tall is a 4-year-old? Like 3
Yeah.
feet tall.
And
Okay,
how about
can't
this, like-
reach them.
Or they grab a baseball bat or a golf.
And why is this?
Yeah,
Why don't we
There's
start
like a
blaming the
million of
manufacturers? Because that's
How
popular,
about
right?
the
Like,
kids that bring guns to school and shoot their teachers?
Yeah, it's
like little kid, and they just out of a fit of rage, it could be over the dumbest thing. And it's like you thought that gun was secure and locked away, but somehow kids can be very sneaky. They found it and took it with them.
Wasn't there even that situation recently where a 6-year-old shot the teacher? And it's like
That's what I'm
the
referring to.
6-year-old
most gangster
obvious.
6-year-old ever.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, think about it. It's a 6-year-old. They obviously could not appreciate the gravity of their actions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also the thing is, I don't know how well the gun was locked up or whatever, but kids can be really crafty. Like you want to watch like those like baby cameras of like toddlers escaping from cribs. Like
They're
they
little
are
humans.
crafty.
They're
Well, I think the
little
other thing too, though, is like if like a 5-year-old did have a knife, we might get caught, but we could probably like
Stop them.
disarm them.
But not
Yeah.
a gun.
And with a car, like
Not with a
maybe
gun
he
car.
can get it out of the driveway, but I don't think he's like doing laps around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
He's probably gonna hit something and then stop. So,
Yeah, you know.
but with the gun, I feel like is a little bit different.
Yeah, because that's what the kid doesn't know what he's doing. You try to approach him like, okay, little Johnny, okay, why don't we just put it down?
And
you
it's
know?
over. Like, it
Yeah.
could just
Yeah.
be over immediately because it's a gun, you know.
So, but yeah, I don't know how well it was locked. I actually don't even remember what ended up happening. But yeah, that's
From what I understand, the teacher ended up living. She actually like took, even after being shot, like took control and make sure everyone was secure and stuff. And I think she actually handled it really well from what I heard, what I understand. I
Sounds
don't
like
know
it.
all the details. She didn't die.
It's good.
She was shot, but she lived, survived. But the other question I was going to think of is like, okay, wait a minute. Like that kid was like 6 years old, but like, if you're gonna anything legal, like you said, he's irrational. He's a kid. He's not thinking. Should that ruin his entire life now? Like traveling forever?
I don't think it would.
Like, should that be on a record? Like, how is that gonna do?
I highly
think that
doubt
gets-
that kid was going to prison.
I highly
No,
doubt
but,
that's
like,
staying with
it's
him
gonna
past
be-
18. I don't think it's.
That's the thing, though. Like, is it?
Well, it's
is there gonna
staying
be
with
any
him
legal?
probably in some
Well,
way.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, mentally,
But
yeah.
like, you know,
I don't think legally.
like, yeah, like that's the
Or
thing.
even just like the family relationship
Mhm.
after.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, okay, what if it was a teen? Like, where do you draw the line? When then they are charged as an
That's
adult,
where
but
the
they're,
argument is. Like, at
you
what
know,
age?
where do you draw that line?
Every
Yeah.
state has like different age laws on that.
Yeah.
And some of them they handle it by trying them as an adult, and some of them it's based on every case. Some of them it's a strict age cutoff. It's different in every state.
But then you can have that cutoff, but even like trying a 16-year-old as an adult versus a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old, it's
Well,
They usually set some kind of cutoff.
some
but then it's just another
16-year-olds
cutoff.
Yeah,
are
exactly.
mentally
It's like-
12 or 13. Some 16-year-olds are mentally 18. That's the other thing. Like, everybody's going to mature differently. Age is just a number in that sense.
It
Yeah,
is. It is
cue
just a
like
number,
one
yeah.
of our old recordings where you've seen even people trying to say, well, especially it's teenagers, like why do we have an age of consent in that? Shouldn't it be based on maturity, not age? And it's like, well,
Fishy.
there needs to be at least okay. It sounds like 95% of it is coming from teenagers. But it's like, well, the thing is, there needs to be some sort of objective cutoff.
There's got to
like,
be some minimum.
yeah,
right?
you can't say, I think I even said it in the recording, like, okay, you can't arrest somebody for like a 19-year-old for having a 15-year-old girlfriend. Okay, she's going to go to court, she's going to take a maturity test, if she passes, you're free to go. If she fails, you go to prison. Like, that's not how justice
That's
works.
not how it works.
So they have to put an objective cutoff. You know?
Yeah, just to, it's more for the sense of like predictability and stability in the law. It has less to do with actual like the consequences and more just so that the law is clear.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I remember that case, but I like the case of the 6-year-old shooting the teacher. I don't remember specifically what happened. All I'm saying is I highly doubt that 6-year-old is getting charged with a crime because again, like reasonably speaking, they're too young to understand the gravity of their situation.
They're gonna need so much therapy though, which again goes
yeah.
back to my argument about having a lot of money before you have kids, so you can afford the lawyers and the therapy required to make this. I don't want to say right, but more right than.
Well, that also goes back to the whole that there are states that limit the amount of liability your kid could do. Is should you expect every 30-year-old newlywed couple to have $1 million in the bank before having babies?
Yes.
Because what if the kid causes some sort of destruction or something because irrational and unpredictable, and the state says, well, you don't have money for the expensive lawyers, I think it is kind of good that, in the sense, liability is limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that way it doesn't.
Otherwise, basically, nobody would have kids except the super rich.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's got to be some kind of limit there.
Yeah.
And it also it does go to the, and actually now that we talk about liability based on what your family does, I mean, we talk about nations where you are liable for things that your family does, even if they're older than you, for example, right? Like North Korea, for example.
I was gonna say North
if
Korea.
If your father or grandfather does something, you could be arrested for that or even killed for it. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I don't think it's fair to bring up North Korea because
we are
they also just recently legalized pizza. Like, I'm pretty sure North Korea is a meme more than it's an actual country, so
it's a real
I don't think it's fair to compare a Western country to North Korea, because North Korea is kind of like the epitome of ridiculous.
We're not making
in terms of like totalitarian states.
Yeah, we're not making a direct comparison. We're just showing that, this whole thing about liability being limited based on what your family does, it has roots. It has roots in the idea that we shouldn't punish somebody for something somebody else did. It goes all the way back to the Constitution. And if I had more than just a random thing about law in my mind, I would actually say what it was. But the closest thing I can think of is bills of attainder. And so, but like that's not what it is. That's something else. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, what else?
Mm-hmm.
You want to pause that for now?